in that situation with what was happening with my current work situation, et cetera, it would have been very easy just to hit neutral and pause. And I chose not to do that. I chose to grab another gear and say, we're moving.
Welcome to Grit Meets Growth, the podcast where we explore getting uncomfortable, making things happen, and creating a magnetic life. Now let's get after it.
Where do you want to start this thing today, John? We're on to episode 9.
It's funny, like every time we do one of these episodes, there's always like things going on that make for good fodder and conversation. It's interesting. So we're in this transition spot right now. So right now it is beginning of September when we're recording this. Kids are going back to school. I even see it with clients where all of a sudden summer's over. We start transitioning into fall, and everybody all of a sudden is like, oh my gosh, I have 3 or 4 months left to hit my goals for the year. Like I made goals at the beginning of the year. My amount of time I have left to chase them is getting short, and everybody puts the pedal to the floor because now we've got stuff to do.
Does everybody really put the pedal to the floor though? Because I heard something the other day on TV, and I don't remember who it was, but they were like, we're heading into fall. Time everybody wants to just slow down and really take it all in. And I was like, wow, no.
I thought that was summer, man.
At least in Minnesota it is, right?
That's what it seems like. It's interesting. I mean, looking at the calendar, it's September. You got 4 months left till the end of the year. You got a limited amount of time left before you hit 2022. And I mean, 2022 is a random date. Like that whole, like in the new year, I'm going to make my life completely different, or I'm going to set my resolutions or whatever that is. There's a lot of BS in that. I don't subscribe to that 100%. I think it's a good mark in the sand to say, okay, once we hit the new year, let's look backward at where we've been and look forward at where we want to go. But that's something we could do today. Like you could easily sit down and look at, here's where I've been, here's where I want to go. And one of the things that's really hit me just over the last couple of weeks is that we get what we tolerate. So we can dive right into this. Like I've realized personally, I get what I tolerate. And that's what I tolerate from other people in relationships and what I tolerate from myself. Specifically to myself, sometimes I tolerate some really dumb stuff. It comes down to, like, I want to be healthy, and I say I want to be healthy, and then I walk through the kitchen and I grab a bag of chips. There's an apple sitting right there, or there's like oranges. There's always oranges in my kitchen. I don't grab the orange. I grab the chips. I grab something out of the fridge that I know isn't probably good for me. It's not going to get me to where I want goal-wise or physically. We get what we tolerate. That same thing is at work. We get what we tolerate in work. I know I've got a project I want to wrap up, I want to get done, or I've got some progress I want to make on something, and I tolerate being lazy sometimes. That's the thing that has really hit me, and especially looking at this transition time and what's coming. What's that stop, start, continue list? What are the things I need to stop doing? What are the things I need to start doing? And what do I want to keep doing? Where does that land on you? Where does that take you?
Yeah, it brings up kind of this recent quote I saw by Andy Frisella, which kind of resonates with exactly what you're saying. He talks about the days you don't feel like doing it are the days you find out if your goals really are your goals or if you're just full of shit. Like, are you kidding yourself, right? Are you really serious about your goals? Or are you just sitting here kidding yourself about them, right? So if we've written down or we've established a goal for ourselves, like everything that we're doing should focus towards achieving those goals. Are we going to be perfect all the time? Absolutely not, right? But we should always be making forward momentum towards those goals. I was having a conversation at the gym this morning, just on that topic, right? Consistency is a word that comes up all the time. I don't have to be perfect. I just have to be consistent. If I'm just showing up doing those things. I don't have to eat perfect. My diet doesn't have to be perfect, but if I'm do it consistently well, if I treat my diet with the respect that it requires, and I do that consistently, I can have those days where I'm not feeling it, or I eat a bag of chips and I don't grab the apple. But as long as I'm consistent with it, I'm going to move in the right direction. Again, we come back to the gym, and I know we always talk about it, but it's life's lessons learned in the gym. Consistency, right? If we set a goal of what we want to achieve in the gym, we have one of the members at the gym I go to, in the last 90 days, he set himself a goal and he achieved it in 90 days. And part of it was consistency is what got him there. Is he perfect every day? Absolutely not. Just being consistent.
That bit about not being perfect every day too, we like to look at, we're going to get from point A to point B, and it's going to be a straight line. We just did a social post on Instagram about this the other day. Point A to point B, and it being a straight line from one to the other, does not exist. Like, very rarely do we ever accomplish anything that's that straightforward. There are a lot of winds and a lot of twists, and sometimes those twists take us backward before we get back on track and we're going forward again. It's a jagged, nasty line sometimes that gets us from point A to point B. The point being, you just want to keep making progress, and it isn't going to be perfect all the time. We've talked about that in the past. Allow yourself some grace in that, but keep moving toward that goal. Keep remembering what the goal is and keep moving toward it, and keep questioning, like, is this something I should tolerate in my life, or is it something that I should make some moves and change?
Right. And sometimes we have the foresight to be able to see issues before they happen, right? In being successful, whatever success is for you, sometimes we can see it and not have that huge step backwards, right? And maybe it's just a side step. And then there's going to be times where we just get blindsided. It knocks us back 2-3 steps, right? Things happen. Like, we're all human. We're surrounded by humans. We can only do so much. As long as we are focused, though, on that goal, those side steps, those knockdowns, and we shake ourselves up, get back up, dust yourself off, and keep on trucking towards your goal, again, comes back to consistency.
One of the things that came up once in a conversation I had with Jamie Tates was along those lines, where she talked about, if you're driving a car at night, your headlights are only going to show you so far out in front of you. You can't see the entire road all the time. So you just have to trust what you see in front of you for that little bit and keep driving, and just know that you're going to be able to see as much as you need to see to keep going. And to your point, things are going to pop up that are unexpected. That's life. And that's just something we all have to deal with. But to keep moving forward and to just go as far as the headlights, be able to see as far as the headlights will show you, is enough.
Well, and the same thing, we put a post up the other day about the staircase, right? I don't need to see the entire staircase. All I need to see is the first step, right? It's that same approach, right? I just have to see that first step, because once I see that step, then I see the next one and the next one and the next one. And before you know it, you look back and you're at the top of the staircase.
The beauty of this whole conversation so far is it's all about choices. It's about the choice to make the first step. It's about the choice about what you're going to tolerate. It's choosing what direction you want to head. It's choosing to keep going when those obstacles come in front of you. Everything we do is based on choices, and we need to make the choices. And then, like that quote you shared, do the work. 9 times out of 10, we have a goal or something we want in life, and we'll say we want it, and we'll write it down, and we'll do all the right things. But when it gets tough, or when we don't feel like it, that's where we come off the rails, because we have that moment where, like, I don't feel like it. Well, that's really the test of how bad you want it, is how you show up when you don't feel like it.
And the other thing I think too, we should make sure we talk about is goal setting, right? And I've struggled with this in the past. I want to set a goal, and we should set stretch goals for ourselves, right? It should be a stretch to achieve. But once I set that goal, does it really, I challenge you to focus on the activities that are going to get you to that goal versus that goal. So once I set that goal, let's take a step back and focus on the activities that are going to get me there. That's where our day-to-day focus should be. And I challenge you to do that. If we focus just on those small steps, it comes back to that. I don't need to see the whole staircase. Yep, my goal is at the top of the staircase, right? I can't necessarily see the 8 steps that are going to get me there. All I can see is that first one. So set those markers for achieving your goals short, and then keep working towards it. And one builds upon the other, right? Focus on those steps that are going to get you to your goal.
You need the steps. You need those milestones that you're going to get to along the way to be successful. So when I ran Grandma's Marathon, it was a long run. But what I realized was every mile they had this feather flag that said, hey, you're at mile 15. And as long as I got to mile 15, I was good. And then I could say, okay, I just want to get to mile 16 now. I didn't have to worry about mile 26. I needed to worry about mile 16 and then 17 and do it in steps like that. And as long as I did that, that would get me where I wanted to go. There were times along that journey too, where it wasn't even, I need to get to mile 17. It's, I need to get to that tree. And then I need to get to that rock. And then there's a car parked up there. I'm just going to get to the car parked up there and have the activity just get me to those real small pieces, because that's where I was at. That's the headspace I was at.
And I think that's true for any big goal, right? We've talked about that in the past, whether it's long distance, driving, long distance motorcycle riding, it's the same thing. Long distance running, it's the same thing. We only can focus on what's that next thing, right? For me on the motorcycle, it's that, all right, all I got to do is get to the next gas stop. If I can hang in until the next gas stop, I'm that much farther down the road. I don't have to focus on the whatever 600 miles that I'm doing today.
That's the conversations we've had about you on the bike have been interesting to me, because I think I've never looked at like a bike trip like that and the challenges that come with it. I've always looked at it as, God, it looks like it's so much fun. But like you've said, when it's 95 degrees out, I just want to get to the gas station so I can get off the bike and get something to drink. Yep. And have a break. I think there's definitely, and that's another thing. There's times when we watch somebody else's journey and we think it's all fun. We don't see what the journey is actually like. We just see like our fantasy of what the journey is, whether it's the bike trip, whether it's the marathon, whether it's starting a business, whether it's a relationship. We see the pieces that people let us see. But the reality of it is every single one of those comes with challenges and obstacles and struggles that come along on the journey. And it's part of the journey. Whatever your journey is, there's going to be those moments, but that's part of the journey. You got to learn how to enjoy that part of the journey, which we
absolutely. And I think that's the key, right? We only see what people want us to see, what they let us see, right? And social media is full of those success stories. And you and I, we follow and have looked up to a lot of the same folks that have built businesses, and they've got private jets that they're flying around and fancy cars and all of this, right? And we see that and we want to achieve that, but we don't see, as you said, all those steps that they've taken to get to that point. The 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 years that they've spent getting to that point. Right? We live in such a world of instant gratification. Everybody just wants that right away without putting the work in. It all takes work. I mean, growing a business is hard work, no matter what it is that you're doing. Sometimes you get lucky and you get a big bounce, but the reality is it all takes work. And every one of those folks that you quote unquote successful will tell you the same thing. You got to put the work in. Whether it's Jesse Itzler or Ed Milet or Andy Frisilla or Sean Whalen, right? Or Rob Bailey, they'll all tell you the same thing.
And it's not even just the business side of life, but it's like we've talked about the gym. The thing that sticks out to me is the relationship side. Like being a married man, marriage takes work. Like I laugh because I used to have this group of guys that I would meet with like once a week, and we would have conversations. And I got to know these guys really well, kind of inside and out, everything about them, right? And over time, you learn a lot about the guys you hang out with and in those friendships, right? The funny thing was, I would see the work that these guys were putting into their marriages. And there were a lot of, like, it's marriage. So there's a lot of challenges that go with being married and being in a relationship like that. And I'd laugh because sometimes my wife at the time would be like, oh, the Franklins have it so good. They're just, everything is perfect in the Franklin house. And I'd laugh because I'm like, honey, I'm going to tell you right now, if you saw behind the curtain and you could see what I know to be true and what I hear, you might not say that. You might see that they're normal, just like we're normal. They have challenges just like we have challenges, and that this is a lot of work. And I think that's part of this conversation is we talk about doing the work, but everything that we're trying to accomplish, whether it's launching a business, having a great marriage, being a good parent, showing up in the gym, every single one of those involves a lot of work. And it going back, it all depends how you're going to show up. You want results in any one of those areas, you're going to have to focus and you're going to have to put in the work.
Yeah. I've said for a long time, it's not the situation that builds our character. It's how we react to it, right? It's not the argument or the conversation, the tough conversation we just had with our wife that really makes our marriage. It's how we react to it, right? It's what the outcome of that conversation is. It's what we do with that information and how we change and adapt that really makes the strength of that marriage, right? And you can apply that to plug in any situation, whether that's in our marriage, in our business, in our personal life, right? Name whatever that challenge is. How we react to it is what's going to get us to the goal.
That whole concept of how we react. So I'm listening to the book, It Takes What It Takes by Trevor Moab. And this is the guy who is Russell Wilson's mindset coach. So Russell Wilson, the NFL quarterback, been to the Super Bowl. It's his mindset coach. He's got physical coaches, nutrition coaches, the whole deal, right? But he's got a mindset coach too. And one of the things that shows up in this book is the idea of neutral thinking. So something happens to you in life, you have options, right? You could go negative with it and go down that negative hole that is really easy to go down, and it's not going to take you anywhere good. You could go straight up positive and be rainbows and sunshine and unicorns. That's not always realistic. But in the middle of that is neutral. And Trevor talks about neutral thinking in this book. And it's been really interesting because neutral thinking is, this happened. Here are 5 things that I know to be true right now based on the circumstance that I'm in. And I'm going to let those 5 things ground me. And I know this is true. I know this is true. And I know this is true. Based on those facts, I'm going to make some decisions on what I'm going to do next. And one of the things that's powerful that he talks about is your past is your past. It's past. It's done. You don't have to go back to it. You don't have to repeat it. You don't have to rewind it 28 times. Past is past. What is really going to make a difference is how you react and how you move forward in the future. What are you going to do next? And just listening to that has been really powerful. And that the concept of neutral thinking and the concept of past is past have both landed on me really hard this week. And they've been really hit home.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is actually from the Vikings TV show. And it's where Ragnar, they just fought this big battle with Ragnar's brother. And he's got his son Bjorn by his side. And Bjorn is and they're sailing back down the river after this big fight. Everybody's kind of licking their wounds, right? Everybody's cut up and hurt from battle. But Bjorn keeps looking back, and Ragnar says to him, "Why do you keep looking that way? You're not going that way." And I was like, wow, that's a powerful statement. And that was from a couple of years ago on the TV show. And it really has resonated with me since then. Like, the past is the past, just as you said. Why spend time looking back? Now there's lessons to be learned potentially, right? But let's get those processed. Let's get them out of the way and let's move on. What are some examples of you finding neutral?
I wrote about this a little bit the other day. So when I got divorced, I had to shift into neutral. It would have been really easy in that process to shift into reverse or shift negative. And there were a lot of opportunities for me to spiral backward. But I realized pretty quickly that if I looked at neutral, I had two kids that needed me. They needed me to show up for them. There was no option. I needed to show up for my kids and be the dad that they needed me to be. I was in the process of launching Orange Ball at the time, and Orange Ball needed me to show up. And we were in a spot where we were growing, and that was important. I knew that I had a bunch of guys around me that supported me, and that was true. So looking at all of those things that were true, and looking at it, knowing that there was a future out there that I could get to if I didn't let myself get pulled backward, those things were all true. So those were the things I focused on, and that was neutral for me. I looked at all of those things, and I used those as a launch pad to be the dad I wanted to be, to work on the business that really could have used my attention at that point, that needed my attention, and to start a future. And it was like, start a future. Now I'm remarried. If I had spent my time looking in the rearview mirror and focusing backward in reverse, I wouldn't be remarried right now. My kids wouldn't be where they're at right now. Business wouldn't be where it's at right now. I would have gotten pulled backward, and I wouldn't have achieved any of the things that I really wanted to achieve or have the life that I have now, which is pretty darn good. So how about you?
I think very similar to, your situation. I think neutral for me has really always been about, how do I find that next step forward? How do I find that next gear forward? I think you and I talked about it earlier, right? You have to go from reverse to forward. A lot of times you have to go through neutral. If you're on a motorcycle, to go from first to second gear, you go through neutral. So I always look at it as neutral is just that thing that exists to get me to the next gear, to the next step, to the next thing. It's interesting. On a motorcycle, we don't have reverse. So, we're always going forward regardless. It's just a matter of how fast are we going forward. So I kind of view it a little bit differently, I think, than you. As far as that way forward, I think back to 14, 15 years ago when my wife and I made the decision to move to Minnesota. And in that situation, with what was happening with my current work situation, et cetera, it would have been very easy just to hit neutral and pause. And I chose not to do that. I chose to grab another gear and say, we're moving. And we started putting pieces in place. I mean, within a week, I had stuff packed up. I was moving out here to come look for a job. My wife was staying home with the kids. My oldest was finishing up her school year, and, packed up and moved, and we figured it out along the way. Looking back on it now, it's the best thing we ever did. But for me, it was about grabbing another gear.
You didn't have a plan when you did that. Like you had it, as far as like, you didn't have a plan. I mean, you didn't have a job lined up when you came here, right?
I did not.
Like what gave you the ability to be bold enough to be like, I'm going to pick up, move to a new state. I'll figure it out as I go.
I just did it, man. I don't know. Some of that is just on instinct, right? You just go. I wish I had an answer. I don't. I looking back on it as we sit here right now, I go, I didn't know any other way but to keep moving forward. And for me, that was my forward. Like, I knew I couldn't be in the situation I was in any longer. And I didn't want my family in that situation, and it was time to change it. And so what? We moved 2 states away. I knew at least here, I had a bunch of family here. aunts and uncles and cousins. At least I knew I had something that could ground me here. But I knew I needed to get out of my current situation. So you just do it.
A lot of people are going to hear that and go, I don't know how to even start that, because a lot of people are in situations where they're not happy with their job. They're not happy with a relationship. They're not happy with where they're at some piece of their life. And this is a good reminder that sometimes you can put the track together for the train as you go. It doesn't have to be all put together to where you know exactly where the train's going to take you. You can build the track as you go, and that's okay sometimes. And I think we're trained to know exactly what result we're going to get. If I do this, I know I'm going to get this in return. And the world doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you just have to go, I'm going to take a risk, and I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I know myself well enough to know I can figure it out along the way. And I've got people that will help me and support me as I dive into that.
Yeah, you have to trust yourself.
That whole idea of you have to trust yourself, I think that confidence is an interesting topic, because I think we all know on some level what we're capable of. And on the other side of that, we all question what we're capable of. So it's this weird, like, push-pull relationship. Like, I can tell you, I'm pretty confident in who I am and what I'm capable to pull off. And on the flip side, I definitely have these moments where I stop and I look around and I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. And it's normal. I know that it's normal, but it's just this, I'm confident and not confident at the same time.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Well, thinking back to, the move, right? It was not comfortable at all. It was a very uncomfortable situation, right? I have to find a job. I have to sell my house in Michigan. I have to somehow figure out, my wife and I have to figure out how to get everybody moved here and where to move to and what are we going to do? We have to find a house here to live in, right? I mean, I was fortunate enough to be able to live with my grandma for a period of time, but that wasn't infinite. I had to find my own place. So I had all of these challenges in front of me, and it was uncomfortable. That whole move, there was nothing about that move that was comfortable. There was nothing about that situation that was comfortable. But somehow I knew that was the right thing to do. I don't know how, but it just was like, this is what we need to do.
Did you find that the discomfort pushed you to figure it out?
Certainly. I think that with any situation you get into, comfort, you hear a lot of people talk about it all the time. At least, I mean, maybe it's just because that's who I'm following. But, there's a lot of talk in the folks that I follow on social media about comfort and comfort will kill you. If you're in a situation where you're comfortable, you might as well just throw it in, because you're never going to achieve what you want to achieve. Listen to that again. If you're in a situation where everything is comfortable, you won't ever achieve the things that you want to achieve. It's a total mindset game, right? And getting in a situation, finding yourself in situations where uncomfortable, for me, has propelled me forward in pretty much every situation in my life.
Same. It's interesting, as I'm listening to you talk about that too, my mind started to race a little bit ahead. And I'm like, because we all want to find contentment. We all want to be in a spot where we're content with where we're at. And when you start...
Is content and comfortable the same thing?
No, that's exactly where I'm going with this. At first, when I started thinking about it, I'm like, oh, content, comfortable are the same thing. You can be uncomfortable and content at the same time. And that's what I love about this conversation, is because I've been very uncomfortable at times in my life, but still very content. And that's almost like the best possible place you can land. Is I'm uncomfortable. I know I'm headed someplace. I'm not there yet, but where I'm at in this moment, I'm content with where I'm at along the way. That's huge.
Absolutely. It kind of heads me down this path. That piece of conversation heads me down this path of, we see I see a lot of out there. People saying, well, you only live once, right? YOLO, right? Everybody talks about YOLO. Oh, you only live once. I'm like, I want to flip that over and go like, the reality is we only die once. We get to live every day. Every day that we get up is a new day. And what are we going to make with that day? Right? We've talked about that. Things and strategies to do to get you to a point of being content with your day. But get out there and live that day. That's what it's all about. Making the best of it. Having those conversations, meeting the people that you want to meet, listening to the books that you want to listen to, gathering as much information as you need to be able to find that stair in front of you and look for that next step. That's going to get you to the next step, to the next step, to the next step, right? When we moved here from Michigan, I didn't have any of that stuff figured out. Had no idea what I was going to do, but I had enough faith, as you mentioned, in myself that I knew that we'd figure it out. And I knew that my wife and I together would figure out what was best for our family. That's what I love about her. I mean, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together. We've been in that situation many times in our life. And we just, we hunker down, figure it out together, set the course.
I would echo that about Christina. And it doesn't mean that any of this is easy. It's not easy. A lot of times those moments where we're going to have to get together and figure it out sometimes those are the most difficult moments we go through. But when you feel like you're on a team, when you feel like you're a team heading toward the same goal and same destination and you're doing it together, it's a game changer. I think as we come out of this episode, there's such a good reminder in there. Just take the first step. You don't have to have all the steps. Just take the first step. You don't have to know where the entire path is going to take you. Just take that first step and start to move forward. And going back to the beginning, think a little bit about what you tolerate, what is okay and what's not, but just move forward and keep moving and take some of those risks where you trust in yourself, you have confidence in what you're capable of, and go for it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's a really good wrap on it.
It's a good place to end, and it goes back to that's that message we're trying to deliver with this is just keep moving, keep going. If we can encourage people, not motivate but encourage them to just keep moving and keep going.
Yeah, everybody's path is different, but know that your path is the right path for you. I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason in our lives. Whether we think that we had control over it or not, everything happens for a reason. Getting knocked down, getting back up, whatever that is, right? Whatever that happens is, it's for a reason.
Just keep going.
Keep going. Take the first step or the next step in some cases.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed today's episode of Grit Meets Growth. We have 2 asks for you as we wrap things up today. First of all, if you enjoyed this podcast or you got something out of it today, we'd love to have you subscribe and follow us so that you can get your ear in on more of these conversations. And the second thing we'd love to have you do is if you heard something today that you think could help somebody else or that they need to hear, we just ask you to share the podcast and let this message be magnetic to as many people as possible. So with that, have an awesome day. Make it happen. Get out there, do the work, and let's get after it.